Sir, will you be there during the day of our physical verification?
Why does everyone ask me this question?
Sir, we want to meet you.
আপনাকে দেখতে পাবো সেই কারণে।
Sir, we want to meet you.
হ্যাঁ স্যার, এক্স্যাক্টলি সেটাই।
Wait a minute. When is the verification? Third?
Yes, sir, our is third. And MD ma'am said that our reopening is decided at 7th.
Seventh. Okay. Let me start presenting.
Sir,
Yes?
so can you help us finding PGs?
I'm afraid not. It's beyond my competence.
Yes, sir.
I know a couple of PGs, but they are all people. Okay, so this is pretty simple stuff. We first start with a demand curve which is given by A plus BP and QS is equal to C plus DP. Okay, so demand quantity is a function of price. Okay. We will be undertaking the following exercise. First, we want to find out the equilibrium price. After this, we will find out, we will impose an excise. We will impose an excise tax. Oh,
Looks like a train.
yes, but it's very annoying for me. Okay. Yeah. So first we'll find out the equilibrium price. Then we will see that if we impose an excise tax, okay, I hope that I'll be able to tell you what is an excise tax. Okay, so after that we want to see that if an excise tax is imposed, what is the impact on price? And specifically, obviously price should increase, but we want to show that suppose you have an equilibrium price, this is the starting equilibrium price without tax, and then you impose the tax, price is going to go up to, let us say, P star. Okay, but you will see that the increase in price is less than the tax. Okay. Now, before that, what I should have told you is what is an excise tax. Taxes are of two types. One is an excise tax. So this is imposed on the quantity. So that means per unit you have to pay an amount of alpha. So if you buy 5 units, you have to pay 5 alpha as tax. If you're buying 10 units, you have to pay 10 alpha as tax. The other type of tax is ad valorem tax. This is imposed on price. So beta per, this is basically a percentage of price. So let us say beta is 10%. So that means the price that a consumer has to pay now is 1 plus beta. So in this case it is 1.10. If the tax rate is 10%, you have to pay 10% extra of the price. Apart from that, of course, you know that we have the profit tax, the lump sum tax, etc. But if you're talking about, but these are the two main forms of taxes in which we are interested, because as you may remember, that taxes which are on profit or on which are lump sum does not really affect decision making. The equilibrium remains same. Okay. So over here we have got two questions, and then the final question is how do we maximize the tax revenue? So that means we have to set the tax rate. We have to choose the tax rate small t so that the tax revenue is maximized. Okay. Now the reference for this is the book by Archibald and Lipsey. So when I finish the class, rather after I finish the class, if you can please just send a mail to me reminding me to look up Archibald and Lipsey. If I can find it on a soft copy, I will send it to you along with the relevant pages. Okay, so please send a mail when I finish the class. Okay. So let us say that we have a demand curve given by A plus BP and a supply curve given by C plus DP. Now, can you tell me what is the can you impose any restriction on B and D? Can B be positive? B is negative?
D is positive.
Yeah. If we assume that we have normal demand and supply curves, then we require these two.
B will be negative.
Sorry? Beg your pardon.
I was just telling, sir, if it is normal demand curve,
Yeah.
then the B will be negative.
Yeah.
Negatively sloped towards the.
And can you tell me what is the relation between A and C? This is the demand curve, right? And this is the supply curve. Okay. So can you tell me what is A and C?
Sir, isn't the intercept?
If we write Q over here,
Sir, it is the intercept there.
it is the intercept. So
Yes.
what is this? This is A and this is C.
See, yes,
The
So,
difference of the intercepts.
yeah.
The
So
two parts.
can C be greater than A? What will happen?
So then there will be no equilibrium only.
yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So A should be greater than C, but well, we are not interested in that condition. Okay. So I don't want this also. Okay. So the first step is, how do we find out equilibrium? And the answer is very easy. We simply equate demand and supply.
So QD is equal to QS.
Yes. And then we solve for, we are going to get
E.
price. So can you tell me what will be price?
So A minus C divided by D minus P.
D minus B. Just an example. In this case, what is P star and what is Q star?
Sir, equal to 200.
P is 200. P star is 200.
P is 200 and
800. Just
800 sir. Q star.
yeah. Okay. Anyway, we have found out the first result, and let us keep this aside. Now let me shift this. I will also require this result. Okay, good. Okay. And what is quantity?
sir, AD minus BC by D minus B.
Okay. Now let us introduce an excise tax. Now what happens is, when we introduce the excise tax, the consumers have to pay, this is the consumer's price, they have to pay the price charged by producers plus the tax of small t. This is the tax rate.
So
And
P is the
This is the supply price, you can say.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, I'm just asking one thing, sir. The small t, sir, is it like the lump sum tax? Like it is just being
No, as I've
imposed?
told you, that let us suppose that T is 10. Okay, so that means uh, if you buy Q units, let us say Q is equal to 5. If you buy Q units, then you have to pay a tax of how many units you are buying into the tax rate. So this will be 10 into 5, 50. If,
Acha.
if you are buying 12 units, for every unit you have to pay 10 rupees.
Okay.
So it is 120.
I see. Now I understood, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, this is the, remember this was a model. Okay. Now, there's a difference between this price sorry. There's a difference between this price and sorry. And this price. Previously, both the prices were same. The price that the consumer. Oh, okay. I'll just keep this. This is the price which consumers are paying. So this is, you can say PC, which is equal to P plus T, and this is the price that producers are receiving. Well, they are receiving P plus T, but they are able to keep only price P. Okay. So what we can do is, over here we can substitute P plus T. So QD is equal to A plus B, and this is actually P plus T. Okay. QS is the same as before. And now if you solve for P star, what do we get?
Sir, A plus BT minus C by
Slowly,
C
slowly. A plus
BT minus
minus
C by D minus B.
D minus B. Okay, let us see how we are getting it. A plus BP plus, this is how much? BT, this is okay, so we have Let us see. This is okay. This is A minus C, and let us take all the p's together. D minus P, and we have BT over here. Okay. So we can write D minus B is equal to A minus C so price will be let us keep this in this form, and the reason is that you have A minus C by D minus B, so this is the original price. You can see that this is the original price, plus you have right. You can say this is the post-tax price and this is before price. So it is very clear from this that there is a difference between the two prices. The imposition of an excise tax changes the price. If the tax rate is 0, in that case P star 1 and P star 0 will be same. That's a very trivial result. But now what I want to ask is that given P star 1 is equal to P star 0, okay, two questions. What happens to price? Which price is greater? P0 or P1? And why?
So because B is negative in sign and D minus B is positive, so
Okay, B is negative.
and D minus B and D are both positive.
D minus B is positive. Okay. So in that case, what happens? This is equal to P star 0. This is
The
negative.
term is going to be negative.
Yeah, and this is positive.
Yes, sir.
Wait a minute, I want to rub it out. Okay. So what does it imply?
So P1 is greater than P0.
Obviously.
Uh,
So P star 1 is
Sir, I have a doubt.
0. P star 0,
Yes, sir.
isn't it? Let us suppose P star 0 is 5 and you have a negative amount.
Yes, sir. P star 0 is greater. Yeah.
Okay, so P star 0 is greater. What does it imply? It implies that the price which suppliers were getting has fallen. Right? What is this P that I'm finding I've derived? This is the price that the suppliers are getting, See over here, producers are receiving P. But what happens if to the consumer price?
Sir, what is actually P star one that you have written there? I mean,
Yeah,
is it the
হ্যাঁ আমি
consumer?
বলছি,
Sir.
just let me save this.
Yeah, yes, sir, obviously.
Okay, I need space. Yes. What were you saying?
Sir, I was asking that what is
Yeah.
actually
What
P
is
star
this?
one? Is it the consumer
Acha,
buy?
acha. Oh yeah, yeah. Before I had imposed the tax, is there any difference?
No, sir, it was same.
Okay. Now look at how I'm defining the price. This is actually PC and this is PS.
Huh? Yes, sir. Yeah.
ঠিক আছে?
Yes,
So
sir.
this is the price plus tax. You can see the
Yes,
price
sir.
that suppliers are getting plus tax, because PS and P are the same.
Yes, sir.
So that means you are paying, let us say 10 rupees. The consumers are getting, sorry, the producers are getting only 8 rupees. Okay. Achha.
Yes, sir.
So what we have seen over here is the first result is that producers are getting a lower price. This is result 1.
So this is because B is negative, but if B was positive, then would have been opposite, right?
Yes, in that case it would have been opposite. But in that case, if B was positive,
So then to it will be
আরে
a
দাঁড়াও দাঁড়াও আমাকে
Then P star 1 would be
দাঁড়াও
greater
দাঁড়াও
than P
দাঁড়াও
star not.
দাঁড়াও ওকে ঢোকাতে দাও এদের। Yeah, then what would be have been D minus B?
Yes, sir, and I think P star 1 would
So
be
it
greater
would,
than P
yeah,
star
so
not.
it would have been a bit difficult to say. I mean, we'll have
Yes.
to find out. We can come to that later on, but let's solve the first the question that I want to answer. See, producers are getting a lower price. What about consumers?
So they will get the price P1 star festive.
Yeah, let's find it out over here. Consumer price is PC is P plus T. So this is obviously P star 1 by T, which is P star 0
So why is it P star 0? P star 0 was the previous price now?
হ্যাঁ আমি লিখছি, I've not written it.
So plus D into
Oh, আচ্ছা this
আমার
part.
একটু স্ট্রেন পড়ছে।
ও আচ্ছা
Yeah.
sir.
হ্যাঁ, I mean it's not very easy to write over here, একটু স্ট্রেন পড়ে যায় খুব। So
আচ্ছা
আচ্ছা, now look at
Plan
this
use
part.
করবেন।
What is this?
D by D minus D into T.
right? It becomes d by d minus b. Acha. Now what is d?
It is greater than 0.
D is positive, and we know that d minus b is also positive.
Positive.
So p star 0 is plus, and tax is also positive. So that means you are adding a positive amount. So this implies that your consumption price that consumers are paying, are higher than p star 0. So consumers will pay a higher price. Okay. Now there's one other question that I want to ask, that okay, fine, consumers are paying a higher price. Okay, now previously let us say they were paying 10 rupees. Now a tax has been imposed. It says that you have to pay 5 rupees per commodity, per unit that you are consuming. Now tell me, intuitively, what would you expect? Consumers will pay a higher price, but what is the extra price that they have to pay? Did you get my point?
So could you repeat it once again?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Consumers are paying a higher price. Okay?
Huh. Yes, sir.
Their price is now whatever the price plus T. PS plus T. Now what I'm asking is that previously the consumers were paying PC0. Now they are paying PC1. Is this difference equal to T?
Sir, is it d by d minus b into t?
Yeah, let us see whether it is equal to T or not. So that means now if you are paying 5 rupees originally and the tax is imposed of rupees 1, are you paying 6 rupees? That is the question that I'm asking. Now if you look at this, see what is PC1? PC1 is simply P0. Okay. This is right. Now look at this part. We know that D is positive and D minus B is also positive. You are adding something, right? B is negative, so you are adding a negative quantity to a positive amount, right? So which one will be larger, D or D minus B when B is negative?
Say D minus B.
Minus B.
This will be larger, right?
Yes, sir.
So that means the numerator and denominator, the denominator is larger than the numerator. And if you multiply this by into T, what does it mean? You're taking the price increase, price is going up, but only by a fraction of T.
Yes, sir.
Consumer price goes up, but the increase is not T, but a fraction of T. The fraction is D minus B. Right?
Yes, sir. Sir, is the rest part compensated by the decrease in the price received by the supplier.
Yes.
Achha.
So that is what we call the tax burden.
Yes, sir.
Part of it is borne by the consumer in the form of higher prices. The remaining part goes to the is borne by the supplier. He has to reduce his price. And as you can see, what is important over here, what is important over here is, what was the term? Let us see, it is yeah, so this is the price. So okay, now if you look at it, see how is the tax or burden of the tax distributed. If you look at the term, it depends upon D and D minus B. This determines the distribution of the tax burden between the consumers and the producers. What is the burden on the consumer? The burden on the consumer is, this is the increase that they have to pay. What is the burden on the producer? Their price goes down by D minus B by T. So the first question that I want to ask is, does intercept play a role?
No, sir.
Intercept means A and C. A and C doesn't come into the picture. It only
Yes, sir. The
determines
slope.
equilibrium price.
So the slope is
Only the
mainly.
slopes are important.
Actually, the slopes are indicating the elasticities as well. That's why I think.
Yes. Only the slopes are important, not intercepts. And if you add them, what will happen? In fact, this is minus, remember? So if you,
Sir, it will be T.
it will become T. Okay. And as you can see that the exact distribution of the tax burden will depend upon the relative slopes of the demand and supply curve. Okay, so if you have a high amount of D, the consumer is going to pay a higher tax burden, and if you have a high amount of B, then the producer is going to pay a higher amount of bear a higher amount of the tax burden. So D in very high means on the other hand, if B is high and D is low, then the tax burden, greater part of the tax burden falls on the producer. Now, let us suppose that you have a positively sloped demand and supply curve. Okay, so the assumption is, oh, not supply. The demand curve is positively sloped, and let us just put in draw the supply curve over here. The blue is the supply curve. Now we can have two situations. One is the demand curve is like this. In that case, what will happen? Do we have equilibrium?
No, sir. Tax to infinity हो जाচ্ছে in that case because D is equal to B.
Yes, there is
They are
no.
parallel.
আমরা just the starting equilibrium, what we call P star 0, that equilibrium itself doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Okay. Now let us go for a different type. Let us suppose that it's like this. Well, it's very difficult to draw it. I'll just draw the partially. Okay, so let us suppose that the demand and supply curve coincide.
So multiple equilibrium problem. I mean, infinite equilibrium points will exist then if they coincide.
Yes, in that case again we have multiple equilibrium. And when the tax is imposed,
So in say infinite tax it will be because D is equal to B.
no,
Now
what happens is it just becomes like this. I mean, you don't have equilibrium.
Sir, can you show us a sum on this tax mathematically instead of A, B, D, like with numerical values?
Okay. But let me first show the mathematical general
Yes, sir,
case,
surely, sir.
and then I'll
Yes,
go
then.
it. So this is actually, I don't think it's very interesting as such. Okay, so what is more interesting is that if you have a situation when they are not parallel. So this is the supply curve. After the tax is imposed, price shifts downward. So this is S, and this is the post-tax supply curve. And the demand curve, let us say, now we make it non-parallel. So we can have a case like this, a case like this. Just wait a minute, please. So I'll draw the next case again. Okay, so this is the starting price. Let us call it A. Let us call this C and let us call it D. So what is the extra price? What is the increase in price to the consumer? So this is plus.
Sir, এটা ঠিক বুঝলাম না। Can you explain once more this part? The last.
Yes, what you can see is this is the original price A, where the demand curve, এইটা হচ্ছে তোমার original price টা, হ্যাঁ, where the demand curve and supply curve are intersecting. আচ্ছা, when the tax is imposed,
Sir, if a tax is imposed, then why the supply will shift rightward?
Yes, sir. It should
আচ্ছা,
should take what না?
না না আমার এখানে এখানে ঠিকই বলেছে, আমার এখানে একটু আঁকাটা ভুল হয়েছে। Okay, so we start from A. When after starting from A, this is the new intersection. Okay. So in that case, see, the increase in price paid by the consumer is given by, we have to look at the demand curve. Okay, that is why it will be B and D. So the increase in price is BD. Now the entire tax, the increase in price goes up. The consumer pays a higher price. But what is the price that the supplier is receiving? That is given by S. He is not getting the tax. So suppose if you look at a particular amount over here, what is the market price? The market price is this. But how much is the supplier getting? The supplier is getting only this much. This is going to the supplier. This is going to the government. Okay? And this is the entire price which is being paid by the consumer. So that means initially the consumer was paying a price of A. So this is the price that he was paying. Now he is paying a price given by this. So what is the price increase? It is from A to D, which means from B to D. What is the price that the supplier is getting? He is getting only BC. And BC is going to the government. Okay, is this clear now?
So here the price of supplies rise after the tax.
Yeah. Here also his price is going up. So what is happening over here? The difference with the earlier case is two things. How much has price gone up? Previously it had gone up. Consumer, if suppose you are imposing a tax of 10 rupees. How much did price increase? By less than 10 rupees. Okay, so the increase in price was less than T. Now, what is the
It's
increase
more
in
than
price?
T.
It is more than T. So part of it is going to the government, part of it is going to the producer. Okay, in this way, if you have a positively sloped supply demand curve, then this is the problem that the consumers are going to face.
Sir,
Yes.
so one thing, sir, in the graph, sir, you have shown by drawing a vertical line, one part is paid by consumer, and of that part, it is being divided between government and the supplier. But sir, isn't it depicting the quantity? I mean, Q is the y-axis. I mean the vertical axis.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry, absolutely, absolutely. আমার একদম just এই quantity-টা actually we are used to setting price on the y-axis.
acha.
Sorry, you're perfectly right. Sorry, I'd better redraw that thing. Okay. আচ্ছা তাহলে let me draw the I shouldn't have drawn it like so far. এটা গন্ডগোল হবে. Let me redraw this then. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Not getting the correct axis. Let me see. Wait a minute. Let me see how I have to draw it. It has to be very close. Okay. Okay. এইটা হবে. Oh, even this is wrong. I'm sorry. When I just can't draw this properly. I'll better draw from here. এখান দিয়ে ড্র করলে বেটার হচ্ছে। আচ্ছা কি হলো এটা? Yeah, now it is okay. I mean, sometimes just it may be a very simple diagram, but drawing it can become hell. Let me see. Yes. Okay. Okay. So now what happens is give me 1 second. I'll tell you. So EF is the tax amount. When you impose the tax, then the price falls by DE. Okay, so we move from here, the price falls by DE. So the consumers gain by this, and if D EF is the tax, the suppliers the decrease in price of the suppliers is DF. Okay, so this is the original price. This point, I'm labeling this X. X is the original equilibrium. Okay, where you have the demand and supply curve. Once the supply curve is imposed, once the tax is imposed, it means that the consumers are paying, the suppliers, the producers are getting a price like this. The market price is determined based on the blue line. So when a tax is imposed, consumers face a supply curve given by S2. Okay. But the producer supply curve remains S1. Okay, so that means the equilibrium is occurs, demand and supply equilibrium occurs at E. So demand is equal to supply at E. So initially the price was this entire amount. Now the price is only up till E. So the price falls by ED. The producers are suffering in two ways. One is consumers are paying them a lower price. Simultaneously, out of this E amount, see now they are getting only E, but out of this E amount, they have to pay an amount of EF as tax. The tax is given by EF. So ultimately, they get only F.
So,
Yes?
so why is S2 on the right? Like after tax, how is it becoming, like how is it on the right?
How is it? The reason is that for... Sorry, just a minute, I've lost my cursor. Yeah. See, this is for a particular quantity. Right? So, how much were consumers paying before? They were paying only this much. Now, for the same amount, they have to pay F plus the tax. That is why the supply curve is shifting to the right. If you
Okay, sir. And sir,
I'll just show you something which may make it clear.
Sir.
Wait a minute. Can I do this? Can I rotate this?
Sir.
Wait a minute.
Oh, okay, sir.
Can you see this? Now it's actually going up. The price is going up. You have imposed a tax. That means the quantity has gone up. You are paying a higher price. So when you look at it, if you don't rotate it, it appears that you are paying a lower price. Okay, because we are used to see price over here.
Yes, sir. I was going to ask that question only, sir. For this case, why are we reversing the axis? I mean, generally we use P for the vertical axis.
We use P for the vertical axis.
Yeah, but here we are using
if
the
you
converse one. That's I mean, why? Is there any specific
how
reason?
yeah, just 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Let me keep it over here so that let me do some housekeeping, then I'll come back to you.
Okay, sir.
Yes. Okay, before that you answer me this question. Suppose I have a function of like this and I want to graph it. I want to plot it on a graph. So what will I write on this horizontal axis and what will I write on the vertical axis?
Sir, on the horizontal we are going to write x and on the vertical y, since x is the independent one and y is the dependent one.
So basically I'm going to write the independent one over here
Yeah,
and the
independent one
dependent
on
one
the
over here.
yes, sir.
Does it answer your question? How have we written the demand function? What does it imply? This is the,
Independent.
and this is the,
Dependent.
so how
Oh,
should I
actually,
plot it?
oh yeah, then but q is going to be on the vertical one and
Yeah,
p on the horizontal.
yeah, but it is, as you are rightly pointing out, it is a bit confusing.
Yes,
Because in general what we do is, we write, this
p
is
on the
actually, yeah, this is actually the correct form, but in general we write,
the incorrect one.
yes, we write price over here, we write quantity, we reverse the
Okay.
axis. Okay, now let me
Yeah,
try.
because generally we always take price on the horizon, on the vertical axis.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's why we tell that inverse demand curve instead of demand curve.
yes.
Yep.
Now, okay, wait a minute, this is a very deceptive curve. It looks very simple to draw. And let me bring in the demand curve. This is the demand curve. Okay, so this is the opposite of the earlier case. In the previous case, the demand curve was starting from below. Now the demand curve is starting from above. So does it make a difference? Let me see, this was S1. So you are paying a price of this. This is the original equilibrium, right? Let's label this as AB. Now what happens? This is the equilibrium. Let us label this as CDE, and just for comparison's sake, I'm going to call this B1 over here. Okay, so this point is B1. AB is equal to, so the original price is AB, which is equal to B1C. Okay, what happens after we impose the price? After the tax is imposed, consumers pay a price of how much? CE. So what is the price increase? It is
BE.
B1E.
Yes, B1.
And what happens to the producers? How much are they getting? You have to go along the supply curve.
So CD.
It is CD. And what is the tax? The difference between the two lines? DE. Now B1E is B1D plus DE. Okay. The producers, are they gaining? Producers are also gaining. How much is their gain? They were getting B1 before, now they are getting D. So producers are gaining by D. So consumers pay an extra price. The price goes up by B1E. This is split up into two parts. One is the tax which goes to the government. This is DE. And the other part goes to the producer. This is B1D. So this you can say is the opposite. If the demand curve cuts the supply curve from below, then the producers are hit very badly. But if the demand curve cuts the supply curve from above, then it is the consumers who are hit very badly. In both cases, what happens is only one person has to pay the entire tax and also part of the price burden. So what happens over here is the burden it is zero for the producer. In fact, he gains from this, and for the consumer, the burden is greater than the tax. In the earlier case, what happened was the producer's burden was greater than the tax. The consumer actually gained. His price has gone up. Here, his price has gone down. Okay, so basically to sum up, what we can say is that if you have a normal demand curve, that is, it is negatively sloped, price paid by the consumer rises, price received by the producer falls. Okay. So this implies that the burden of the tax is distributed between consumer and producer. To what extent? It depends on the relative elasticity. If you have a positively sloped demand curve, see, one possibility is that you have multiple equilibrium and so on. Let us drop this. One situation is demand curve cuts supply from below. This was the case that we had discussed before at the start. And then the last case, demand curve cuts supply curve from above. In this case, what happens is price paid by consumer falls, price received by producer also falls, plus he has to pay the tax to the government. So the entire burden falls on him, on the producer. In fact, he has to bear a greater burden. His actual burden is greater than the tax. And if you're talking about the consumer, well, not only does he not share the burden, but now he is actually gaining. In this case, what happens? The price paid by the consumer, what happens? This is the second case. It is going to rise. The price received by the consumer, is also rising. Here again, in addition to the price that he pays to the producer, he also has to bear the tax burden. So the producer gains, while in case of the consumer, his burden is greater than the tax. Okay. Now we come to the issue of the tax revenue. See, the tax revenue is simply, or before that, if we just look at, see, the price is A minus C, this is D minus B. Right? What is dP by dt? This will be 0. So we simply have D minus B. Right? And we know that this is positive. Okay. Next is, this is tax revenue is capital T equal to T into Q. By the way, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
You have become very
Yes, sir.
quiet, all of you. Don't worry,
Actually, these things are very tough, sir. Like to processing a time like
And sir, also we are very panicked about everything
exactly, sir.
to be
Yes,
revamped.
sir.
okay. Now over here, if we put in BP. So we are basically using the demand function over here. Tax into Q. We are substituting the demand function over here. Then in the next step, we are putting in price. Now if you simplify this, you will see it comes to we can write this in this way, in this format for convenience. Okay. Now this is a quadratic function, right? It is a polynomial of power 2. So if you do dt minus dt, see all these are positive, you are going to get alpha plus 2 beta t. Now alpha is ad minus bc by d minus b, and this is, I'm putting in beta over here, right? Now we know that this is positive, right? Because this was the initial price. Just one minute. See, this is positive because over here, from here, we can see. This is the equilibrium output in the absence of tax. So this is obviously positive. Now let's come to over here. Two is positive. B is negative, D is positive, and this denominator is positive. Okay. So that means what will be this term?
So it will be negative.
So can you tell me what is dt by dt? We don't know. We can't say. We have got a positive or negative amount. So what we should do is, we should look at it in this format. Let's combine the d minus d. What we have is ad minus bc, and this is 2 bdt. This is positive, this is negative. Okay, so now it becomes slightly easier. ad minus bc is greater than 2 bdt. This is positive. ad minus bc this will be negative. Okay, so that means at some range, if you are increasing tax, what will happen to revenue? At some range, revenue is going to go up if this is satisfied. On the other hand, it's quite possible to have a certain range when this condition is satisfied. In that case, dt by dt is negative. So if you increase tax, your revenue is actually going to come down. So that means if you just go on blindly increasing tax rates, it may be counterproductive.
So is it the mathematical explanation of the Laffert's curve, as you had told once, that once it will increase, then it will decrease? I mean the revenue, that part.
Actually, wait a minute. The Laffer's curve is more in the case of when you're looking at income tax.
Oh, acha. And these are indirect taxes, right? And that was a
This is
direct
an
one.
indirect tax. That is a direct tax. And then the last result, that okay, what I'm getting is I'm getting a quadratic, roughly I'm getting a quadratic function like this. If I'm looking at the tax rate, my function is going to be like this. If I go on increasing taxes, the tax revenue is going to go up. After some time, tax rate is going to fall. So ideally what I should do is I should keep my set a tax over here in order to maximize tax revenue. Okay, so how do we find out this? See, T was, let me see, okay, so what we want to do is we want to maximize T by choosing the tax rate. What is the condition for this? How do we find the maximum?
So we set it to the equal to 0.
We don't set it equal to 0. Before that we do something. We take the derivative.
Differentiate.
Yeah, so we
Yes, sir.
differentiate.
That we equate to 0.
Yeah. So AD minus, this is D minus B, and this is 2B dt by D minus B equal to 0. So D minus B you can forget about. 2B dt is equal to BC minus AD, or T star is BC minus AD by 2 BD. Now there's a risk over here. What is the problem? We don't know whether, this condition dt by d capital T by d of small t equal to 0. This can be satisfied in 3 cases: maximum, minimum, or
Point of inflection.
point of inflection. So we have to check, right? And this should be negative. Okay, so we have done this. Now we have to take the second derivative. So d square t dt square is equal to 2 bt. All this is this part is constant, it will disappear, and this will be d minus b. Okay, 2 is positive, b is negative, d is positive. Meanwhile over here, this is also positive. So that means it becomes negative. So the second order condition is satisfied. Okay, so it looks a bit complicated over here if you do it on using these problems. Uh, but suppose we have a demand function which is given by this. What is the equilibrium price and what is quantity? Or in fact, better still, let's work out from the keys that we had used before, because you might get fraction over here. Do you remember what was this? Okay, this is 1200 minus 2p and this is 4p. So you had told me that p star was how much?
200, sir.
200.
200.
And q star is
800, sir.
800. Okay, now let us suppose that a tax of T is imposed. What will be the impact on the producer price and the consumer price? Let us say that P is the price which the producer is getting. So he will have to pay P plus T. And what is QS? This is 4P. Now tell me what is, let us call this P0 and Q0. Now what is P star 1 and Q star 1? In fact, if you look at it, you have got two P star 1s over here.
It is coming 200 minus t by 3
200
minus t by 3. So P1 star is equal to 200 minus t
wait
by
a minute. P1 star is 200 by
minus t by 3.
minus T by 3. This is the price which the producer is receiving. How much does the consumer pay?
$200 plus 2t by 3.
So this is the consumer price. Sorry, this is the producer price plus T. So this will be how much? 200 minus. Okay. And what is Q?
2t by 3. It is plus t.
Yeah, sorry. It is plus. So who bears most of the burden? Producer or consumer?
Consumer.
Consumer, sir.
And say it is plus 2 T/3.
Yes. His price, bears only 1/3 of the tax burden, but he bears 2/3 of the tax burden.
Yes, sir.
Acha. Next is, what is the tax revenue? So it is T into, you have to put in the demand function. So 1200 minus 2p, and then you have to put in, so it should be like this. You have to put in the price. Yeah, can you solve it please? I'll come back in 1 minute. Okay, so what is this expression? 1200t, this is how much? 400. T will come again over here, and this is minus, am I right? 2 into 2, 4t square, yeah. So this will be 800t minus, okay. Now can you find out what is the optimal tax rate? This is
Equal
800.
to 300.
How much? 8 by 3, right? Equal to 0. তাহলে t কত হচ্ছে? T is 800. So this is the tax rate. Tax rate means per unit you have to pay an amount of 300. But you also should check whether it is coming out to be negative. So this condition should, unless you check this condition, I will deduct marks over here. So this is 8 by 3, which is, sorry, it should be negative. This is negative. So it means it's a maximum. And if you put in T over here into this tax revenue, you can find out what is the optimal tax revenue at that level. Okay, this is easy, so I'm not going to do this. Right? So this is all for today. It concludes the entertainment for this semester. Yes?
I have a question regarding this.
Sure.
So we are predicting most of the is this. So are those things going?
Can you type out your question?
Yes.
Your voice is not coming out properly. Okay, so Sayana, all of you are very scared. Hi, yes, Shomdev. Meanwhile, you can ask your
Has
question.
sorry to
Hi, Shomdev. Uh, okay. But didn't I write transition matrix?
Sir, isn't there? I'm just asking, sir. I don't know, but isn't transition matrix and Markov chain same na? I mean, similar thing.
Yes.
স্যার ওই জন্যই তো বললো না যে
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ ঠিক।
Okay. Shomdev, what were you asking?
No, sir, by mistake I raised the hand.
Okay,
He wasn't asking anything.
okay. Yes, so over to Wait, let me first stop the recording.